Hello, and welcome. Today, I want to begin with a simple question, one that has puzzled historians, engineers, and curious minds for centuries. How did they build this without machines? When we look at ancient structures around the world, what often strikes us first is not just their beauty, but their scale and precision. Massive stone blocks, perfectly aligned walls, and constructions that have survived earthquakes, weather, and time itself. And yet, these were created long before modern machinery, electricity, or advanced tools existed. At first glance, it feels almost impossible. Today, we rely on cranes, engines, computers, and power tools to build even ordinary structures. But ancient builders had none of these. They worked with simple materials, basic tools, and above all, human effort and knowledge passed down through generations. So how did they do it? This question is not about mystery or fantasy. It is about understanding human ingenuity. Ancient civilizations observed nature closely. They understood stone, wood, gravity, balance, and time in ways that may feel unfamiliar to us today. Through careful planning, teamwork, and patience, they achieved results that still inspire awe. In this story, we are not looking for quick answers. Instead, we will slow down and explore how people, thousands of years ago, solved complex problems using the resources they had. Step by step, we will uncover the methods, the ideas, and the quiet brilliance behind these constructions. As we begin today's journey, keep that question in mind, not why they built these structures, but how. Because sometimes, the most fascinating part of history is realizing just how capable humans have always been even without machines. Let us begin. The way a story begins can completely change how it is received. A single question, when shaped correctly, can invite curiosity, calm the mind, or encourage reflection. This is why the same idea must be presented differently depending on where and how it is shared. A short video, a long documentary, or a quiet history narration all require a slightly different approach, even when they revolve around the same central mystery. On fast-paced platforms, attention is brief. Viewers decide within seconds whether to stay or scroll away. In these cases, the hook must be direct and immediately intriguing. Short phrasing, simple words, and a sense of wonder work best. The goal is not to explain, but to spark interest quickly, encouraging the viewer to pause and listen. For longer videos, the tone can slow down. Instead of urgency, the focus shifts toward atmosphere and depth. The hook still needs curiosity, but it should feel inviting rather than demanding. A well-paced opening allows the audience to settle in, preparing them for a more thoughtful exploration of the topic. When the content is designed for calm listening or sleep-friendly history, subtlety becomes essential. The hook should feel like an open door, not a loud call. Gentle language, steady rhythm, and a sense of quiet mystery help create trust between the narrator and the listener. The question remains powerful, but it is softened, allowing curiosity to unfold naturally. This careful adjustment of tone does not weaken the story. Instead, it strengthens it. By matching the opening to the platform and the audience's expectations, the story becomes more accessible and more engaging. The same question can feel exciting, thoughtful, or peaceful depending entirely on how it is framed. And that framing is what determines whether the audience stays for the journey ahead. Titles play a critical role in how a story is discovered. Before any narration begins, before any image is fully processed, the title makes the first connection with the viewer. In a crowded digital space, shorter titles often perform better because they are easier to read, faster to understand, and more visually striking. A short title creates focus. It removes unnecessary detail and leaves space for curiosity to grow. Instead of explaining everything up front, it presents just enough information to raise a question in the viewer's mind. This sense of incompleteness encourages attention, inviting the audience to continue in search of answers. Visually, short titles also work better on screens of all sizes. Whether viewed on a phone, tablet, or television, fewer words mean larger text and clearer impact. This is especially important for thumbnails, where text must be readable at a glance. A compact phrase allows the image and the words to work together rather than compete for attention. From a storytelling perspective, brevity creates confidence. A concise title suggests that the story knows exactly what it wants to explore. It does not overwhelm or rush the audience. Instead, it quietly signals that something meaningful lies ahead, waiting to be uncovered. Short titles also adapt easily across different formats. They can be reused for previews, descriptions, and visual overlays without losing clarity. This consistency helps the story feel cohesive from start to finish. Most importantly, a punchy title respects the audience's time. It delivers intrigue without noise, complexity without confusion. In doing so, it sets the tone for a thoughtful journey, one where curiosity is sparked not by excess, but by simplicity. Curiosity is one of the strongest forces in storytelling. When people sense that there is something they do not yet understand, their attention naturally sharpens. A well-crafted idea does not give away answers too quickly. Instead, it gently highlights a gap between what is seen and what is known, inviting the audience to mentally step forward. In stories about ancient construction, this gap is especially powerful. The viewer sees structures that appear precise, massive, and enduring, yet knows they were built without modern tools. This contrast creates a quiet tension. The mind begins to ask questions, searching for logic, method, and explanation. That search keeps the audience engaged. Rather than pushing excitement, effective storytelling allows curiosity to grow on its own. Simple observations, carefully chosen details, and measured pacing all contribute to this effect. Each sentence adds a small piece of information, but never enough to fully resolve the mystery. The audience remains attentive because they feel rewarded, not overwhelmed. Curiosity also encourages trust. When a story does not exaggerate or rush, it feels grounded and thoughtful. The listener senses that the journey will be guided carefully, with respect for both the subject and the audience. This creates a willingness to stay, to listen, and to reflect. Importantly, curiosity works best when it feels natural. It does not rely on shock or dramatic language. Instead, it emerges from genuine questions that anyone might ask when faced with something remarkable. This shared sense of wonder connects the storyteller and the audience. By allowing curiosity to lead, the story becomes more than a presentation of facts. It becomes an experience of discovery, one where the audience feels involved, thinking alongside the narration as each new insight slowly comes into view. Mystery has a quiet strength when it is handled with care. It does not need dramatic claims or exaggerated language to be effective. In fact, restraint often makes mystery more compelling. When a story presents something remarkable and allows it to speak for itself, the audience is more likely to lean in and listen closely. Ancient structures already carry an air of mystery simply because of their age and endurance. Stones placed thousands of years ago still stand, often with precision that feels unexpected. Pointing this out calmly is enough to spark interest. There is no need to suggest impossibility or hidden forces. The real story lies in what people were able to achieve with patience, observation, and shared knowledge. By avoiding overstatement, the narrative stays grounded. This approach respects both the historical record and the audience's intelligence. It invites reflection rather than reaction. The listener is encouraged to think critically, imagining how each challenge might have been addressed using simple tools and careful planning. A measured sense of mystery also supports long-form storytelling. Instead of resolving everything at once, the story unfolds gradually. Each idea adds context, reducing confusion while maintaining interest. The unknown is not presented as a problem, but as an opportunity to learn. This balance creates a lasting impression. The audience does not feel rushed or misled. Instead, they feel guided through a thoughtful exploration, where questions are welcomed and answers are earned slowly. In this way, mystery becomes a doorway rather than a wall. It opens space for understanding, allowing the audience to appreciate ancient achievements without distancing them through exaggeration. The result is a narrative that feels calm, credible, and quietly fascinating. The tone of a story shapes how information is received. In calm, long-form content, tone matters even more than speed or intensity. A steady, measured voice allows the audience to relax, absorb details, and remain present without feeling pressured to keep up. When exploring ancient construction, a slower tone mirrors the subject itself. These structures were not created in moments of urgency, but over long periods of careful work. Reflecting that pace in the narration helps the audience connect more deeply with the story. Each idea is given room to breathe, allowing meaning to settle naturally. Calm storytelling does not mean a lack of interest. Instead, it replaces excitement with focus. The listener is guided gently from one thought to the next, building understanding step by step. This approach encourages reflection rather than reaction, which is especially effective for educational or sleep-friendly formats. A consistent tone also creates trust. When the narration remains balanced and controlled, the audience feels safe to stay engaged for longer periods. There are no sudden shifts or surprises, only a smooth progression of ideas. This reliability makes the experience more immersive and comfortable. Silence and pacing play an important role here as well. Pauses between ideas allow listeners to process what they have heard. The absence of urgency becomes a feature, not a weakness. It signals that the story values depth over speed. By aligning tone with calm, long-form content, the narrative becomes more than information. It becomes a space for quiet curiosity, where the audience can explore complex ideas at an unhurried pace, appreciating both the subject and the journey itself. Educational content is most effective when it feels inviting rather than demanding. When a story teaches without sounding like a lesson, the audience stays engaged naturally. This balance is especially important when discussing complex topics such as ancient construction methods, where details matter but clarity matters even more. Presenting information in a clear, calm way allows learning to happen almost effortlessly. Instead of listing facts, the narrative connects ideas logically, helping the audience understand not just what happened, but how and why it made sense at the time. This approach respects the intelligence of the listener while remaining accessible to a wide audience. Interest is maintained through context. When technical ideas are linked to human experience, effort, cooperation, problem-solving, they become easier to grasp. The audience begins to see ancient builders not as distant figures, but as people facing challenges and finding practical solutions. This human perspective keeps the story grounded and relatable. Educational storytelling also benefits from pacing. Introducing one concept at a time prevents overload and allows each idea to settle before moving on. The audience remains attentive because they never feel rushed or confused. Instead, curiosity builds steadily, supported by understanding. Another key element is neutrality. Avoiding dramatic claims or speculation keeps the focus on evidence and reason. This strengthens credibility and encourages the audience to think critically rather than passively accept information. Learning becomes a shared exploration rather than a one-sided explanation. By blending education with thoughtful storytelling, the narrative becomes both informative and engaging. The audience gains knowledge without feeling lectured, and interest is sustained through clarity, relevance, and quiet curiosity. This is where learning feels natural and where understanding lasts beyond the story itself. Simplicity is often underestimated, yet it is one of the most powerful tools in storytelling. When a narrative is clear and uncluttered, the audience can focus fully on the ideas being presented. There is no need to struggle with complex language or unnecessary detail. Instead, attention stays on understanding the story itself. In topics related to ancient construction, simplicity helps bridge the gap between the modern world and the past. By using straightforward descriptions, the story makes unfamiliar techniques feel approachable. The audience can imagine the processes more easily, even without technical knowledge or background. Simple storytelling also enhances trust. When ideas are expressed plainly, they feel honest and confident. The narrator does not rely on complicated explanations to appear authoritative. Instead, clarity becomes the source of credibility. The listener feels guided rather than instructed. Another advantage of simplicity is flexibility. Clear language adapts well to different formats, whether the content is visual, audio-based, or purely narrative. It allows images, pauses, and subtle details to support the story without competing with the words. Simplicity also supports a calm emotional tone. Without dramatic phrasing or excess detail, the story feels balanced and steady. This makes it easier for the audience to remain engaged over time, especially in long-form or background listening content. By embracing simplicity, the narrative invites reflection rather than distraction. Each idea stands on its own, clearly connected to the next. The result is a story that feels easy to follow, quietly compelling, and respectful of the audience's attention, proving that sometimes the simplest approach creates the strongest impact. Visual elements often speak before words do. When an audience first encounters a piece of content, the image and any accompanying text are processed almost instantly. Keeping on-screen text minimal allows visuals to carry the emotional and informational weight of the story. Minimal text gives space for scale, texture, and detail to stand out. In stories about ancient structures, this is especially important. Stone surfaces, shadows, and proportions communicate age and effort in ways that words cannot. Too much text can distract from these visual cues, weakening their impact. Short phrases work best because they complement the image rather than compete with it. A few carefully chosen words guide the viewer's attention without overwhelming it. This balance helps maintain focus and creates a more immersive experience. From a practical perspective, minimal text improves clarity across devices. Whether viewed on a small phone screen or a large display, simple text remains readable. This ensures the message is received quickly and effortlessly, regardless of viewing conditions. Visually quiet design also supports calm storytelling. Without constant visual noise, the audience can settle into the rhythm of the narration. The eye is not forced to jump between elements, allowing the mind to relax and absorb the story. By limiting text, the visuals gain authority. They become part of the storytelling rather than a background element. The audience is invited to observe, to notice small details, and to form their own questions. In this way, minimal text strengthens both visual impact and narrative depth, allowing the story to unfold naturally. Images have a unique ability to awaken curiosity without explanation. When a viewer sees an ancient structure rising from a landscape, the mind immediately begins to ask questions. How was it built? Why does it look this way? How has it lasted so long? This silent questioning is a powerful entry point into the story. Allowing imagery to lead means trusting the audience's natural sense of wonder. Instead of directing every thought, the narrative gives space for observation. Wide angles reveal scale, close details show craftsmanship, and natural lighting emphasizes age and texture. Each visual element adds meaning without needing to be explained immediately. When images guide curiosity, the narration can remain calm and focused. Words become a companion to what is seen, not a replacement for it. This balance creates a richer experience, where understanding grows through both sight and sound working together. Strong imagery also slows the pace. The viewer is encouraged to look carefully, noticing patterns, alignments, and materials. This slower rhythm supports thoughtful engagement, making the story feel more reflective and immersive. Importantly, imagery grounded in reality maintains credibility. Real landscapes and authentic structures anchor the story in history. The audience senses that what they are seeing is tangible, something shaped by human hands and time. By letting imagery guide curiosity, the story becomes more intuitive. The audience does not feel pushed toward conclusions. Instead, they are invited to explore visually, allowing questions to form naturally before answers are offered. This approach deepens engagement and makes the journey of discovery feel personal and meaningful. Every ancient structure tells a different story, even when the central question remains the same. A massive stone pyramid, a mountain city, or a carefully aligned temple each present unique challenges and solutions. Adapting the narrative to the specific structure being discussed helps the audience understand these differences without confusion. When the story acknowledges the environment, materials, and purpose of a structure, it becomes more grounded. Building on flat desert land requires different methods than constructing on steep terrain. Local stone behaves differently from wood or clay. By focusing on these distinctions, the narrative feels precise rather than general. This approach also deepens appreciation. Instead of viewing ancient builders as using one universal method, the audience begins to see how adaptable and observant they were. They worked with what was available, responding thoughtfully to climate, landscape, and cultural needs. Each structure becomes a reflection of its place and time. Adapting the story does not complicate it. On the contrary, it clarifies why certain techniques were used and why others were not. The audience gains insight into decision-making rather than just outcomes. This helps transform impressive results into understandable processes. Visual and narrative alignment plays a role here as well. When the story focuses on one structure at a time, the imagery and explanations reinforce each other. The viewer is not pulled between ideas but guided steadily through a single, coherent example. By tailoring the narrative to each structure, the story remains fresh and engaging. The central question stays alive, but the answers evolve. This variation keeps curiosity strong and allows the audience to recognize the diversity of human problem solving across different civilizations and landscapes. The success of a story is ultimately determined by how well it connects with its audience. Every choice, tone, pacing, language, and structure contributes to the overall experience. When these elements are shaped with the audience in mind, the story feels intentional and complete. Different viewers arrive with different expectations. Some seek calm background listening, others want thoughtful learning, and some simply enjoy quiet curiosity. A well-shaped narrative allows space for all of these without forcing a single response. It guides gently, offering clarity while respecting individual interpretation. Language plays an important role here. Clear, neutral wording keeps the story accessible and welcoming. It avoids distraction and allows listeners to focus on ideas rather than presentation. This inclusiveness strengthens engagement and encourages longer attention. Pacing completes the experience. A steady rhythm supports understanding and reflection. The audience is not rushed toward conclusions, nor left behind by complexity. Each idea flows naturally into the next, creating a sense of continuity and ease. Visual and narrative harmony further enhances this connection. When images, text, and narration align, the story feels cohesive. Nothing competes for attention. Everything works together to support exploration and curiosity. By shaping the final experience around the audience, the story achieves balance. It becomes informative without pressure, engaging without excess, and memorable without exaggeration. The question that began the journey remains present, now supported by understanding, leaving the audience with a quiet appreciation of human ingenuity and the timeless ability to build, create, and endure. As we come to the end of today's story, the question that guided us from the beginning still lingers. Not as a puzzle that demands a single answer, but as an invitation to reflect. What these ancient structures truly reveal is not mystery, but human capability. With limited tools, careful observation, patience, and cooperation, people were able to shape their world in lasting ways. Looking back, we begin to see these achievements not as impossible, but as deeply human. They remind us that knowledge does not always depend on machines, and progress does not always move in straight lines. Sometimes, understanding comes from slowing down, paying attention, and learning from those who came before us. Thank you for spending this time here, and for sharing in this quiet exploration of the past. If you found this journey interesting or relaxing, feel free to stay a while longer. There are many more stories waiting to be told. Until next time, take care, and thank you for listening.